So about a week ago, I asked you guys to comment your Packers questions down below. And so I want to get to a lot of these questions. There are some similar ones. So if they are exactly the same, I'll probably skip over a few. But I want to get to as many as possible here. So it's going to be more of a quick response to each of these questions. And I want to start off with this one from Raider_570 who says, do you think the Packers should make one huge move or several smaller moves in free agency? I think that when you look at the Packers cap space, which is anywhere from about 47 to $51 million with the new numbers that the NFL put out for the expansion of the salary cap going into 2025. As I said, the Packers have around 47 million to 51 million in cap space currently. And so they have the money to, I think, make a big move, maybe even a couple big moves, as well as some smaller moves. The question becomes, how do they want to utilize all that money? So I think they have the ability to do both. It's not like it's an either or, but just for the question's sake, if they had to make one massive move or a lot of smaller moves, I would say make one big move. I think that when you look at what would be the biggest impact here for the Packers and their team going into 2025, I think it would be adding an elite edge rusher, whether that's trading for one like a Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, whether that's spending up a little bit in free agency, whether that's a Khalil Mack who's a little bit older, Josh Sweat, Chase Young. I think that would be the move, adding an edge rusher that would pay the biggest dividends, and I think that's better than adding a lot of, cheaper guys in free agency. But all in all, the Packers will be able to do both. We've seen in years past the Packers find massive values on guys like Devondre Campbell. He came in initially on a 1-year, $2 million contract, and it wasn't all pro. And so when you hit on guys like that with those, cheap free agent contracts, guys who maybe hadn't found success earlier, the Packers think that they could come into Green Bay and maybe play better than they have in years past. When they can find values like that's a big part in making your team, successful. So I think we'll see both, but I do think the Packers should make a huge move right now with where they are with their team. Then we have from Neil Parler 1980 says, let's bring Clay Matthews back. I loved watching Clay Matthews back in the day. That was exciting. Unfortunately, he's a little too old now, but it was great watching him back then. Then we got Bane8349 says, going to have to spend money to become a step up. So yes, I think that the Packers, if they want to take another step going into 2025, need to spend some money just like they did last year with Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney. I assume they will once again. Then we have from Evan Hayes 523, will we actually sign any big names? Sort of goes along the same lines. I think the answer is yes. I just have a feeling with Gutekunst in his post-game or postseason press conference talking about how the Packers basically need to be more aggressive and really focus on winning championships. I think that just hearing him speak like that makes me think that he knows, he has to know better than anyone where the Packers are weak, the areas they need to improve. He's brought up the fact that the Packers edge rushers didn't perform quite as well as he thought they maybe should have. And so he knows the weaknesses, and he wants just as much as us Packers fans, to win a Super Bowl, because clearly that's his job. That's his main goal. And I assume that signing at least one big name is going to be something he does this year with all the cap space. I would be shocked if a big move did not happen, honestly, more than in years past. Here we have from GoldX6825, what is your Packers dream first 3 rounds? So here I'm going to give more positional. I'm still diving into a lot of these players. There's so many different guys, and so I'm still going through different players. But just from a positional perspective, I've said it here, I want to see edge rusher round 1. I think that's one of the bigger needs. Now, if the Packers decide to sign a big name free agent at edge rusher or trade for one, then you don't necessarily need to draft a first round edge rusher. So it sort of depends on what the Packers do in free agency. That will change what I think the Packers need to do in the draft. They always talk about not drafting for need. They always draft the best player available. But I think that need definitely has to come into their minds as they're, making these types of decisions. So let's say without any free agent moves coming through, I'll say edge rusher first round, cornerback second round. I think that the Packers need to upgrade there. Jair could be gone. Eric Stokes could be gone. And then third round, that's one where I could be convinced of a lot of different things. Receiver, could get some more depth at the receiver. You could also go defensive tackle, bolster that room, offensive line. I think that third round, there are a lot of different things that could make sense. But those are I think edge and corner, two of the biggest needs for this Packers defense. Then we have from Amy Lay Y7495, what big moves do you think that they're going to make? So If I had to guess, I would say they sign one of the edge rusher free agents. I think that it's more likely than a massive trade, like trading away multiple first-round picks for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, even though I think that would be exciting. I would lean towards them signing an edge rusher. So I'd say I would go with Chase Young or Josh Sweat. I think they could make one of those moves. Then from Rock Beast 4291, what would you like to see more? Goody getting a wide receiver or defensive end or cornerback? So I basically already answered that question in a way. I'd say edge rusher. But that's the thing with this roster. I mean, so many different things could make sense. So it's not like if they signed a receiver, not an edge rusher, I would be upset. It sort of depends on the player, depends on the situation, depends on free agency, who's available. So I'd say edge. From Play Ultimate, what do you think about Mike Green as an edge prospect? I have looked into him a little bit. He seems like a beast off the edge. I've seen a lot of things. It looks like he may go around 10th, and so I'm not sure he's going to make it to the Packers at 23. So I really like him. He would be a great fit, but I don't think he makes it to the Packers. Then from Green Bay, All Day 24, do you think we can be a top 5 team next season? Definitely can be. A lot of factors here. I think the Packers, had a chance going into last year to be a top 5 team. I think all year long. They were close to there at times. I think a lot of it comes down to Jordan Love. Can he be more consistent? If he can be, they can be a top 5 team. Because I think we saw from the defense last year, the defense played really well. I do think a lot of this comes down to Jordan Love and the type of quarterback play we get from him. Because if we see Jordan Love like we saw from the Cowboys playoff game last year, if that guy shows up most of the season, this is a top 5 team, no doubt. A lot of it comes down to Jordan. Then from Dr. Yo, what do you think we need to improve or work on to be a Super Bowl contender this upcoming season? Better edge rushers, better play from Jordan Love. Hopefully, not a lot of injuries at receiver. Hopefully, Watson comes back healthy at the end of the year. Dobbs not dealing with those concussions. Those are a few things. From Jared Schroeder 2357, should we trade for a big-time pass rusher like Myles Garrett or Max Crosby? Should we sign some free agents like Khalil Mack and Chase Young? I think a great free agency dive-in would be to get Khalil Mack, T. Higgins, or Devontae Adams and get both Chase Young and Jeff Okudah and get them back with their former coach in Jeff Hafley. Yeah, so I would say if I was a GM, I would make a massive swing move, and if I could get it done, I would trade for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby first off. I would do it. I'd trade 2 1s. I'd go all in. Gutekunst Willie, I'm not sure. I would like him to. I'm not super convinced because there are some options in free agency where you don't have to give up draft capital. So that, in the long run, that may be the better move. So it's a question there. And T. Higgins or Devontae, I think that either would definitely make this team better. I do think that it's not a necessary need to get guys who are that expensive. It depends on Devontae. How much is he going to cost? We don't really know yet. But if you can get Devontae for on a cheaper contract, closer to like 10 to 15 mil, I'd be down to bring him in. Then we have here from XTET something X. Would you like to see the Pack bring in a receiver like DK Metcalf and on defense maybe pursue Max Crosby or Myles Garrett? Should the Pack go all out? So I'm not going to touch on Max Crosby and the other guys anymore because I already touched on that. But I mean, I think anytime you can get a great receiver, it's awesome. The question is how much you're having to pay for him. How much does it cost? I think that receiver is a need. I think they need to at least add one guy. And so there are some options there. I made a video on that. I mean, there's Chris Godwin. Some guys could get signed back by their teams. Marquise Brown. There's a few other options. So DK Metcalf would make the team better. I don't see the Packers doing that, but we'll see. Someone else asked, Bill Davies, thanks for the question. He brings up the Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. I already answered, but thanks for the question. Mr. Sam6352, are the Packers going to win the division next year? And do we even have the cap space to get a superstar receiver or edge rusher? Definitely have the cap space to get a receiver or edge rusher. Will they win the division? That's a tough one. I'm curious to see what happens with the Vikings at quarterback with J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, or will they bring in someone else? The Lions are still going to be a good team, but they have lost their offensive and defensive coordinator. So they could take a step back next year with a completely different, coaching staff there. So the Packers can definitely win the division. A lot of it, as I've said, comes down to how Jordan Love plays. Now we have a few more left. Mike or MKE Devin says, if the Packers bring in a DK or a Max Crosby, should they double down in that position in the trade market or draft? I think they could. I mean, it's never bad to have depth, especially on the defensive line, especially when the Packers, use a lot of depth and don't always play guys a ton of snaps. I think you could use a lot of depth on the edge specifically. Darth Nader 9731 says, should we bring Devontae Adams back? I touched on that, but thanks for the question. Alex ED21, are the Packers in trouble since they lost coaching staff? What positions would you address first? I say edge and receiver and free agency, draft, cornerback, inside linebacker, offensive line. I don't think the Packers are in trouble losing some of the coaches. If they had lost, like Jeff Hafley, I would be concerned. If they had lost Matt LaFleur, I would be concerned. But because they were more positional coaches, obviously those guys do a great job. But I think that, at least for me, as long as the defensive coordinator, offensive play callers are there, I think the Packers will be fine. And then we have from Jacob Taylor 2655, will Aaron Rodgers retire a Packer? That is a good question. That would be awesome if they signed him to like a 10-day deal and just had him retire as a Packer. Will it happen? Who knows? Thank you guys for all those questions today. I do appreciate it. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.